Rain hammered against the windows of the emergency room as nurses rushed a stretcher through the sliding doors. Elena Romano lay on it, her breathing uneven, her dark hair damp from both rain and sweat. Blood stained the sleeve of her dress where shards of glass had cut into her arm during the crash. The bright hospital lights blurred above her as doctors spoke quickly around her. Pulse dropping slightly. Prep her for scans. Ma'am, stay with us. Elena tried to focus, but the pain in her chest made it hard to breathe. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the only thing that mattered to her at that moment, her phone. Please! I need to call my husband, she whispered. A nurse gently placed the phone in her hand. Elena's heart pounded as she dialed the number she knew by memory. Luca DeLorenzo. The most feared man in the city. The man who had promised her that no matter what happened, he would always come when she called. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. Her eyes filled with tears as the call suddenly ended. For a moment she stared at the screen, hoping it would ring back. Instead, a message notification appeared. Her shaking thumb opened it. Stop bothering us. Asterisk. The words felt colder than the hospital room. Elena stared at the screen, confused and hurt. Us? She whispered faintly. A sharp wave of pain rushed through her body, and the doctors quickly pushed the stretcher toward the surgery wing. As the doors swung open, Elena's grip on the phone loosened. The last thing she saw before the anesthesia mask covered her face was that message glowing on the screen, 3 simple words that shattered her heart. When Elena slowly opened her eyes, the world felt heavy and distant. The white hospital ceiling stared back at her, and the faint beeping of machines filled the quiet room. Her body ached everywhere. Her arm was wrapped in thick bandages, and a dull pain spread through her ribs each time she tried to breathe deeply. For a few seconds she couldn't remember what had happened. Then the memories rushed back, the crash, the rain, the emergency room, and the message. Her heart sank as her eyes moved toward the bedside table where her phone rested. It had been 3 days since the accident, the nurse had told her earlier. 3 days. Luca had not come. The door opened quietly and her closest friend, Sophia, stepped inside carrying a small bag of fruit and flowers. She smiled gently, but Elena noticed the concern in her eyes. You scared everyone, Sophia said softly, sitting beside the bed. Elena forced a weak smile. Did Luca come here? Sophia hesitated. That hesitation was enough to make Elena's stomach twist. No, Sophia finally said. But I heard something you might want to know. Elena's fingers tightened around the blanket. The night of your accident, Sophia continued carefully, Luca was at a private party downtown. A lot of important people were there. Elena stayed silent. And he wasn't alone, Sophia added quietly. Vanessa was with him. The 2 of them were together the whole night. The words felt like another collision, worse than the car crash itself. Elena slowly looked back at her phone. Stop bothering us. Asterisk. Tears filled her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. In that moment, Elena made a painful decision. When she left the hospital, she would leave Luca behind too. The moment Luca DeLorenzo saw the message on his phone, something inside him snapped. The words stared back at him like a cruel joke. Stop bothering us. Asterisk. His jaw tightened as he scrolled up and saw the missed call from Elena on the same night. The timestamp matched the evening of the accident his men had mentioned earlier that morning. His heart pounded. Elena had called him. And someone had answered for him. There was only one person who had been close enough to his phone that night. Vanessa. Without wasting another second, Luca grabbed his coat and stormed out of his office. His bodyguards followed quickly as he drove straight across the city to Vanessa's luxurious penthouse. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than ever before. When the door opened, Vanessa greeted him with a bright smile. Luca, I wasn't expecting. Her voice faded the moment she saw the fury in his eyes. He held up his phone. Did you send this message? Vanessa glanced at the screen. For a brief second, her confident expression cracked. That tiny pause confirmed everything. You answered Elena's call, Luca said, his voice dangerously quiet. She was in the hospital that night. Vanessa crossed her arms defensively. She always calls you for attention. I thought she was being dramatic again. Luca's fists clenched. She was bleeding in an emergency room, he said coldly. Vanessa tried to brush it off. I was just protecting your peace. She's always bothering you. For the first time in years, Luca felt something worse than anger. Fear. Because Elena was gone now, and he had no idea where to find her. Months passed, and Elena slowly learned how to live a life that no longer revolved around Luca DeLorenzo. The city felt different without the shadow of the Mafia world hanging over her every step. She rented a small apartment above an old cafe in a quiet neighborhood where no one knew her name or her past. Her days became simple. Peaceful. Every morning she walked to a small bookstore a few blocks away where she now worked. The shelves smelled of old paper and dust, and soft music played in the background while customers quietly browsed. It was a life far from the luxury penthouses, black cars, and whispered fears that once surrounded her. Sometimes customers recognized her beauty and asked about her life, but Elena always gave the same polite smile and changed the subject. She was building something new. Something normal. Yet every night when she returned to her apartment, the silence felt heavier than she expected. Memories of Luca still lingered in quiet corners of her mind, his voice, his laugh, the way he once promised to protect her from everything. She tried to convince herself that leaving had been the right choice. What Elena didn't know was that she was never truly alone. Across the street from the bookstore, a black car often sat quietly with its windows slightly tinted. Inside, Luca watched from a distance as she locked the door each evening. He never approached. Never spoke. He only watched to make sure she was safe. Because even though Elena had walked away from his world, the enemies Luca had made over the years had not forgotten about her. And sooner or later someone would try to use her against him. The night Elena was taken began like any other quiet evening. She locked the bookstore door, waved goodbye to her coworker, and stepped out into the cool air. The streetlights flickered softly, casting long shadows across the sidewalk as she walked toward her apartment. She never noticed the black van slowing near the corner. Across the street, Luca sat in his car as he had many nights before. He watched Elena through the windshield, making sure she was safe before leaving. It had become a silent routine, his way of protecting her without disturbing the life she had chosen. But this time something felt wrong. The van door slid open suddenly. Two masked men rushed out. Before Elena could scream, one of them grabbed her from behind while the other forced a cloth over her mouth. She struggled, dropping her bag onto the pavement as they dragged her into the van. Luca's heart stopped. The car door slammed as he ran toward them, but the van sped away, tires screeching down the dark street. Within minutes, the entire city began to shake. Luca's voice thundered through every phone in his organization. Find them. Every street, every warehouse, every port. I want her back. Men scrambled across the city, searching relentlessly. Safe houses were raided. Informants were dragged from hiding places. Rival gangs suddenly found their operations under attack. For 2 brutal days, the underworld turned into chaos. Then, finally, one terrified informant whispered a location. An abandoned factory near the docks. Luca didn't wait for backup. Fueled by rage and guilt, he loaded his gun and drove into the night. This time, he wouldn't be too late. The abandoned factory near the docks stood in darkness, its broken windows rattling as the cold wind blew through the empty halls. Rusted metal and silence surrounded the place, but Luca knew Elena was inside. His car stopped a short distance away. For a moment, he sat still, gripping the steering wheel. Guilt and anger burned inside him, but there was no time to think. He stepped out, loaded his gun, and walked toward the building with steady determination. Inside, the sound of footsteps echoed through the long corridors. 2 armed guards stood near the entrance. Before they could react, Luca moved quickly. 2 shots rang through the silent factory, and both men collapsed. He continued forward, his eyes sharp, every sense alert. Further inside, more men appeared. Bullets echoed through the building as Luca fought his way through the dimly lit rooms. His suit was covered in dust and sweat, but he didn't slow down. Finally, he reached a locked metal door. From behind it, he heard a faint movement. With one powerful kick, the door burst open. Elena sat in the center of the room, tied to a chair, her face pale but alive. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw him standing there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Luca rushed forward and cut the ropes around her wrists. His hands trembled slightly. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice filled with regret. Elena looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. "You weren't there when I needed you," she whispered. Luca lowered his head. "I know," he replied softly. "But I swear, I will never fail you again."